All right, guys, aftermath on the Torrent. Let's see what we got. It's pretty ugly. This thing got junked. So, as far as the build, this is a 2008 Pontiac Torrent. It's built to the junk run rules for Impact Motorsports. So they give you actually a fair bit you can do to them. So this has, I pulled the 3400 electronic throttle body that came in this. I pulled that motor, put a 3100 motor out of a 95 Lumina in it. I had to couple it to the transmission of the Pontiac Torrent to make all the motor mounts work for the rules. The rules say that the transmission mounts have to stay factory, and this setup mounts 3 out of the 4 spots mounts using the transmission. So we got that coupled together, put my Backwoods Racing tune computer and standalone engine harness on it, and reached out to Jeremy for some advice on how to get this transmission wired. I'm still not 100% sure that we have it wired for first. It seemed a little sluggish, but we sent it anyhow, and it lasted all the way through, but it wasn't really a powerhouse in forward. So we did that. Suspension swap. It has Lumina suspension swap in it. And yeah, this class has a pretty good build set of rules. You can shorten up to the rad support on them. 6 inches, whatever you need to do for the first 6 inches to hold your bumper on. Threaded rod up through the sub. I didn't do that on this one. The sub mounts, the bolts for the sub mounts looked really rusty, and I didn't want to get into changing them out. So I didn't. But yeah, pretty cool class. Gas tank protector, the whole works if you want to do that. For a van class, it's a pretty heavy build in my opinion. Anyway, so let's see what all happened to this thing. Let's start at the back. First off, if you haven't seen the in-car video, check it out. I did struggle with some engine problems on both of my cars on Sunday night. I don't know what's up with that yet. I really have to look into it. This thing was just a dog for the first part of the heat, and it ended up, I think at a red flag or something like that, it ended up stalling. I fired it back up, and then it was just a powerhouse after that. I don't know what's going on, why they're doing that. My Monte Carlo was just kind of a dog the whole time, gutless. I had trouble making any kind of power. Not sure what that's about. So when it wasn't running right, I just decided I'm gonna just send it, and I started making stupid shots. Well, then I gained power, and I never really stopped driving like that. So we just fully went for it, and this is what happened. I don't think you could ask for much better really on the back end of this. I've seen other GM SUVs where they start to plow down, and I mean, this thing just went perfect. It sucked in on both sides. This whole back frame here, it was really heavy. It was out to about, well, at least that line in the floor, probably, somewhere in here, and it just sunk straight in. Those are the bumper mounts. So it did great things. This thing was just a wall on the back end. It was a hard-hitting demolition. That's the hardest demolition I've ever been in before. These vans hit hard. This is a lot of this was done by, I'm pretty sure, a Dodge Journey. Him and I just had at it. So this thing did roll off the trailer. We had to just beat a little metal off the wheel on the other side, and we were able to roll it off, drag it in with the lawnmower. Just buckled the roof up here, inside the back. Let me grab a light. In here, this thing is just junked. Strut towers are out of it. The floor is gone, twisted. The roof is mangled. My GoPro footage, partway through the in-car video, I actually had to change from the forward-facing camera to the rear-facing camera because this was pointed down at the floor. Like, it was rough. Seat is all kinds of broke. Yeah, it was a pretty good time. And then the front end. That's a stuffed bumper. That's a piece of 4x4 by, it's a little light. It's 3/16 inch thick tubing. There's a hole I can stick my hand into in this tubing. This bumper is shoved. I could have shortened all the way up to the rad support. I left it long to leave a little bit of room in here because with I cut out the front of the rad support just to get the headers on. And it wasn't a very thick rad support, so it wasn't really going to do much. So then I left a little extra room with the bumper, and it used it all. This bumper is in tight against the motor. It's got the motor shoved back into the firewall. The alternator's tight into the firewall. This whole front end is mangled. Strut tower is buckled. Look at this front frame rail. Try to get some light in there. There. It's all buckled. Firewall is buckled. This thing is in rough shape. It was still moving around at the end. Subframes all buckled. Both subframe mounts are ripped out of the front. So that probably could have been fixed with, or prevented with the rod. But like I said, here's your mount right here. And it looked pretty crusty. Not something I really wanted to start messing with, but that would have kept that held to the subframe. What took it out? I made a hit and it spit the CV shaft out. So this car was still running and driving looking like this. It still runs. But yeah, it's not driving anywhere. Spit that CV shaft out. I'm guessing with the way the motor moved or the sub, like maybe with the sub coming loose like this, that was just enough movement to pull it out. And that's what did it. But yeah, this thing is junk. There was a lot of time went into this build. It was more just I wanted to see if it can be done. Just me being me, I wanted to see how much I could make an SUV like a W body car. And it was pretty close. In my opinion, this thing's way harder than a car. With this build set, the rule set on this, you can make one of these things pretty nasty. If I were to do it again, which this is, what are we, 2 days later, and I don't feel as bad as I thought I would. Again, check out the in-car video. I shouldn't feel very good today. It was a rough, hard-hitting demolition, but if I was to do it again, I would run one of these again. I would probably leave factory motor in it and just eliminate the questions of, you know, is the transmission wired for first? Having to cut out the front cradle here to put headers on and that. That was more just me being me. But if I did it again, I would do a lot of the same swaps, and maybe a gas tank protector. Might have did something back here. I'm not too sure, but really I'm not all that upset about how the back end was. These were hard shots. Like, if you drove one of these things sensible, it could be a very competitive car. That's my opinion. I'm not disappointed at all how this thing did. There's still some aluminum components on it, like these back spindles are aluminum. They didn't break. This thing has a very heavy rear sub in it. I was really impressed looking at the design of the suspension. That's why I didn't try to modify anything. Aluminum knuckles, but the rest of it's all real heavy steel beam. Even it's ripped, twisted up. But I mean, it didn't go anywhere. It seems to be tracking somewhat straight and all that. So I'm impressed with it. It did kind of what I was expecting with the body. It went a little higher than I thought, but the body's kind of wrapped around that subframe there a little bit and just making it all folded in tight. So yeah, quite an impressive car. I'm glad it did perform for me. I had my doubts. Day of the Derby, I was really having my doubts. I thought I was going to have transmission issues, and I thought it was going to be a big fail, but I mean, it held in there. Shout out to Matt again, last Matt standing, giving it this crazy train paint job. Whenever I looked at this thing when it was in the shop getting built, with the headers on it and stuff, it it seemed like crazy train. That's what I wanted to call it. So I got Matt to tag it up, and it looked great. Yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it for this thing. We're gonna, when I get a chance, I'll strip it down, try to cut this motor back out of here because it's a good motor. There's nothing wrong with the setup. Even the transmission at the end, there was nothing wrong with it, and I was not easy on it. But I won't be saving it. It's special to the. It's a like to the Torrent, so it'll just go along with it. I might say some suspension and stuff because I have a hunch that if I find another one of these, I think I would do this again. It was a pretty good time. So, yeah, there it is. Aftermath on the Torrent. I completely forgot to mention how this derby actually ended up. Ended up with one of the Mad Dogs of the heat. Pretty sure there was 3 of us awarded in that heat. It was a slugfest, and second place. It was a good finish. It was well worth it. The ending wasn't exactly how you always want them to go, so we were down to 3 of us. I made a hit and pulled that CV shaft out, and while it was under my 60-second count, right after that, one of the remaining 2 cars started on fire, and it was deemed to be a big enough fire that they black flagged him, and I knew that my CV shaft was pulled out. So once it went green again, I tried to move, and I wasn't going anywhere, so I broke off, and that landed me in second place. That's Derby. That's the way it goes. I'll take it. Yeah, it was a good night.